Hey, so this is part three of my critique of the top 50 superstars of all time list. I just want to say something about Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect is who is number 15, which is a good position for him. Is one of my favorites of all time. He is definitely one of the most memorable characters of that era, which was one of the most popular eras in WWE history. And he was one of the great intercontinental champions. Great in ring, great on the mic, great gimmick. The chewing gum, everything about Mr. Perfect uh, was memorable. So there, yeah, number 15 is a good position for Mr. Perfect. That's what I have to say. I felt like he deserved some words because that he is up there. He is up there and probably deserved to be have more of an impact on the WWE. Unfortunately, he didn't. He was never a world champion, but facts are facts. I like him. He's one of my all-time favorites, but in terms of the impact he's had on the business, number 15 is good. Macho Man Randy Savage, number 14, needs to be way higher. He's just below the Hulk Hogan's and Stone Cold Steve Austin's and the Rocks of the world. I mean, anyone who has a rudimentary knowledge of wrestling knows Macho Man Randy Savage. Everyone knows. Ooh, yeah, dude. Yeah, everyone knows that he's one of the most iconic figures in WWE history. Simple as. And not only that, I mean, added to the fact that like someone like Hulk Hogan, who was the absolute icon of wrestling. You know, people often say The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin were the Kobe and Magic Johnson, respectively, of their era. I could argue that Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan were exactly that for their era, which again was one of the most popular eras in WWE history. More buy rates, more, the pay-per-views were at an all-time high. Um, I'm sure Macho Man Randy Savage sold a lot of merchandise. I'd like to look it up, but I'm sure he did. I'm sure he's up there as one of the guys who sold a lot of merchandise. He needs to be way up there. I mean, really, he's far more iconic to me than Shawn Michaels. I mean, I really do think that more casual viewers of WWE know Macho Man Randy Savage than people like, well, possibly not Shawn Michaels because he was during the Attitude Era and stuff like that. But I don't know. I just think Macho Man Randy Savage is he he is one of the things that you could say is wrestling. When you think of wrestling, when you think the great promo cutter, great in ring, great great. He was technical. He was a great heel. He was a great baby face. He was the total package. I mean, and above that, an icon, a true icon of wrestling. I don't know much more to say. I really do think he was. So he was number 14, Macho Man Randy Savage, should be higher. 13, Gorgeous George. Again, I don't know enough about his career. He's in the 50s and whatever, but I would say like wrestling wasn't big enough at that time for him to be so high, because he couldn't have had, I know he was one of the first heels and whatever and got huge reactions from the crowds, um, but nonetheless, um, he just wasn't part of wrestling at a time where it was big enough to put him at number 13. Even though I think his impact is probably great being one of the first heels. So I don't know, I'd say top 30 would be good for Gorgeous George. Triple H number 12. Now here we go. This is the problem with wrestling. This guy is the biggest politicking motherfucker of all fucking time. He is completely. I know he has something to do with this list. I know he has something to do with this list. And I'm going to go on to where I think he should be in this list. He's number 12, okay? And I'll go on to explain, to show how objective I am in how I'm looking at this list. But Triple H, it probably has a lot to do with why this list is so fucked up. His biggest massive ego. I've got even proof of it. I'd like to I might put a link towards one of some of his comments on other wrestlers in the business, such as Goldberg. Goldberg completely fucking disses Goldberg, who should be on this fucking list. Even if you don't like him, he should be on this list. You know, and he disses him on the basis of like to the new wrestlers, like, is this the kind of, you know, somebody had a poster of Goldberg up and he was asking the guy, is this the type of wrestler you really want to be? A guy who can't work more than a 15-minute match, who, you know, like, got a lot of greats couldn't work more than a 15-minute match. I mean, Andre the Giant, you know, like, a number of greats couldn't work long matches. That has nothing to do with your impact on the industry, you know. You know, he was talking about a bunch of people just being fed to him, and so that he can beat them. But that was all part of the fucking storyline. I mean, that was part of the storyline. It wasn't like he was politicking for that. That streak was, you know, like one of the great fucking stories of wrestling history. I'm not a huge Goldberg mark, but like his thing against him, and then the fact that he went on to bury Goldberg when he came to the WWE just goes to show his massive fucking ego. Triple H, I absolutely loathe this guy. I mean, seriously, like, you know, people like Kurt Angle were more important, as far as I'm concerned, to the Attitude Era. People like Mick Foley were more important to the Attitude Era. Triple H just worked with all the great guys at that time and had feuds with them. And I'm not saying they were bad feuds, and I'm not saying Triple H has no talent. He's far more talented than John Cena, for instance, who I think is the second most despicable figure in WWE history, in terms of just no talent and just riding the coattails of just single-handedly destroying the industry. But like, Triple H is the fucking guy who's pretty much like whispering, I reckon, in Vince McMahon's ear, and you know, pretty much going against Vince McMahon's better fucking sense, and probably using Stephanie to do that politicking as well. He's, you know, since the beginning, he's a snake. He latched onto Shawn Michaels, and Shawn Michaels is number one on this list. So, and I haven't got as big a problem with Shawn Michaels. I'll go on to what I think of Shawn Michaels later, being number one on this list. But he latched onto Shawn Michaels, which was one of the hottest acts at the time. He then, you know, when Stone Cold comes in and becomes the rebel kind of character, turns himself into a fucking rebel character with DX. DX are way overrated as a fucking stable, and they were over. You know, I can't say anything. I don't know why the fuck that group were over. It's crazy to me, because they were just boring as fuck. The only thing interesting about that stable was Shawn Michaels, and when Shawn Michaels left, and it was Triple H and the rest of them, Road Dogg. Like, it just goes to show, Road Dogg isn't in there. None of the rest of the 1-2-3 Kid, who was better as the 1-2-3 Kid than he was as X-Pac or whatever, are on this list. Why? Because none of them were interesting. None of them were entertaining. You know, like, they weren't one of the greatest stables, you know, and yet there's whole fucking videos about them? Why aren't there videos about the Nation, who were much more interesting than fucking DX? You know, there should be videos about the Nation. They were much more interesting heels than DX were, much more entertaining. You know, suck it, like saying the same thing on the mic every fucking week, as if that was like real fucking amazing, and they were just childish idiots. And then he went on to the game gig, which again, you know, I think he was less over in the game gig than he was in DX. You know, and he wasn't the most over person in DX. The most over person was Shawn Michaels, but in any case, you know, he goes on to be the game, the cerebral assassin, you know, whatever, and be part of Stephanie McMahon. And then what he would do is just latch himself onto the hottest talent. And he's just rewritten the whole fucking history of fucking WWE, making himself out to be the greatest heel of the Attitude Era. No, he wasn't. What happened is, like, in the Attitude Era, Triple H was trying his best. He had a lot of talent, but he just didn't make the fucking cut because there were better people than him. First of all, Stone Cold was a better heel than him. The Rock was a better heel than him. Kurt Angle was a better heel than him. He was politicking to get the best storylines, to be always at the center of the program as soon as he married Stephanie McMahon. The fucking shit goes on, man. Like, really, Triple H was never ever that entertaining. If anything, he had the kind of heat where you're like, I just don't want this motherfucker on my screen, or I want him to lose because I genuinely hate the guy. He's not entertaining. The Rock annihilated him in terms of entertainment value in their feud when he was the heel. Kurt Angle annihilated him in terms of entertainment value when they were in a feud. Stone Cold, the list, Mick Foley, the list goes on. He was never ever the guy, and he just desperately wants to be the guy. I'm not saying he had no fucking talent. He just couldn't be the guy because he's not that interesting. He just isn't that interesting. He's not that iconic as a character. He wants to be in fucking Hollywood. No fucking way. You're not that cool. You know, fucking, you know, Kurt Angle's made more films than Triple H. Because he was a bigger fucking star during that time. He was better. I don't know what to say. I mean, Triple H is a pile of, you know, he isn't. Okay, this is where I'm going to start being objective now. Alright, so I've talked about Triple H a bit now, in terms of his politicking and whatever. Now, Triple H was a good heel. Not one of the greatest, a good heel. He also was very important during the Attitude Era. He was over during the DX period, more so with Shawn Michaels, and still a bit with Road Dogg and etc. He did have memorable segments. I don't think those memorable segments were very entertaining, but a lot of people do. So, having said all of what I've said, where should Triple H be on the greatest of all time? I would say between 15 and 10. Not because I think he was that good, but other people think he's that good. Maybe because of the propaganda he puts out. I don't know why people think he's that great, but people do, and he has been very over, and he has been very important to the industry. I wouldn't put him on the top 50, my top 50, I would not. But considering, he should be from 15 to 10, depending on who comes before him. There are a number of people that have to come before Triple H, including Shawn Michaels, including The Undertaker, including Stone Cold Steve Austin, including Bret Hart, including The Rock, including Hulk Hogan, including Macho Man Randy Savage, including I'd even say Mr. Perfect. No, okay, not Mr. Perfect. Including Mick Foley, including Kurt Angle, including possibly even Goldberg, and Sting. Sting needs to be before him as well. After all those guys, then Triple H. Simply because I can't argue with the facts, which is, unfortunately, Triple H was one of the most important wrestlers during one of the most important periods of wrestling. And I don't think he ever drew. I don't think he drew that much money. I think if you put him in a feud where he isn't with one of the greats, where he isn't aligned himself with the hot talent, I don't think he drew that much. But that's my opinion. You know, I don't. I think Triple H is a disgrace to the business. Really, it's disgusting. If you see some of his interviews about people, how he's buried cats, like just buried them. It's unbelievable. He's a disgrace. Number 11, Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero, rest in peace. Too high. I'm sorry. Eddie Guerrero came into his own during the Ruthless Aggression era, where wrestling was on a downward spiral. He was not as important during the Attitude Era, where buy rates were at their highest, where viewership was at its highest. He just wasn't, and therefore he is not as much of an icon as those who were important during the Attitude Era. So no, Eddie Guerrero, I would say top 20, because I think he's great. I think he's technical. I think on the mic, I think everything about Eddie Guerrero was great. Really, really was. But was he one of the greatest, the most iconic? Nah, not a number 11. I'm sorry, Eddie Guerrero. It's hard to say because I know he's died recently, and it was very, very sad, and we lost him too soon. But no, not number 11. Rowdy Piper, number 10. He needs to be lower, but not much lower. He was very, very important during a time. He was one of the iconic characters during a time when wrestling was very, very important, or very, very watched. So he did the whole thing with Mr. T. Yeah, he definitely needs to be on there, very high, but he needs to be below some people. Not number 9, Rey Mysterio. Should Rey Mysterio be on this? But first of all, he needs to be way lower than 9. Rey Mysterio is a great worker. He's in terms of his wrestling, I've come to appreciate Rey Mysterio over some time. I do enjoy his matches. He needs to be way lower, if not on the list at all. I just don't think his career is. I don't think he's that big an icon in wrestling. That's the fact of it. I just don't think he's that big an icon in wrestling. I think he's got a following. I think he's good. Definitely shouldn't be above Eddie Guerrero. Definitely shouldn't be above Chris Jericho. Yeah, I think if he's on the list, if we're gonna have a tight list, he might make the top 50, but I do not see him as an icon of wrestling, personally. I just don't. Number 8, Andre the Giant. That sounds about right. He could be a bit higher. He's one of the all-time icons of wrestling, full stop. Ricky Steamboat. Again, Ricky Steamboat should be lower, but he is an icon of wrestling, sort of. I think his main thing was his match with Macho Man Randy Savage. He's had some good feuds. He's had some good feuds with Ric Flair, Macho Man, Randy Savage, etc. He's one of those baby faces that, you could say, I don't even know if he had a world championship. There are baby faces, I think, in his era that could be on here before him, to be honest. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but ones that were more memorable than Ricky Steamboat, I think so, but I just can't think of any off the top of my head. I would say even like you know, someone like who should be low on this list, but he should be on here. Owen Hart should be on this list before Ricky Steamboat. Ricky Steamboat could be in it, but he needs to be much lower. Harley Race, I don't know enough about his career as number 6. But I don't know enough about his career, but I very, 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 very much doubt he should be that high. Number 6 should be a place for icons, only icons of wrestling. So I don't think he should be on that high. Number 5, The Rock. Actually, he needs to be in the top 3. He could be a bit higher. The Rock is one of, The Rock is one of my favorites. I might be a bit biased, but I do think if you look at it, he's had the most watched segment in WWE history. His merchandise sales must be one of the highest. He's had the highest pay-per-view rate of all time with his match with Cena. You know, he's one of the best on the mic. He was good in ring. He was the second most important part of the Attitude Era. He needs to be higher. He needs to be number 3 behind Stone Cold Steve Austin. Bret Hart, number 4. Bret Hart is definitely an icon of wrestling and needs to be in the top 10. I think number 4 is a bit high, to be honest, for Bret Hart. Stone Cold Steve Austin needs to be number 2. Absolutely fantastic, you know, best babyface of all time. Was a great heel, great in ring, great promos, total package. Second most merchandise sold. Part of a long-term part of the most important storyline during the highest ratings of Raw. So Stone Cold needs to be number 2. The Undertaker, number 2. I love The Undertaker. I think he's such a great in-ring worker. I think his gimmick is brilliant. It took me a long time to appreciate him. Really, I had to go back and look at his matches because he was always feuding with people that I liked more than him. So I always kind of disliked him. You know, during his first period during that gimmick. But the thing about The Undertaker is you remember him. You remember him, you remember him, you remember him, and he's definitely one of the icons. If you've ever watched wrestling for a significant amount of time, you will remember The Undertaker because of that gimmick. It was just such a good gimmick, and he was so good in ring. I would say he's less of an icon than some of the people, and I will do my top 50 list after so that you can compare to WWE's top 50. Shawn Michaels is number 1. Shawn Michaels has all the talent in the fucking world. He really does. I don't think he's as good as promos or as good as a speaker, but when it comes to in-ring, there's very, very little who can touch him. I think Kurt Angle, personally, is the greatest in-ring wrestler, you know, of all time. Possibly you can tie him with Shawn Michaels, but I don't think Shawn Michaels. Well, he was part of the boom period as well. He was part of the boom period, the Attitude Era, but he certainly wasn't the most important character during that boom period. He was one of them, but not. He was never the man during the period. And when he was the man, the ratings on Raw went down, and that's something I should have said with Bret Hart as well, which is why I think he should be a bit lower than the rest of them. So Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels are both, you know, victims of that. I mean, you can put them high, and I did watch them, and I did enjoy them during these periods where Raw had low ratings, but it wasn't must-see TV when those guys were the guys. You know, in a way it was must-see TV when Stone Cold Steve Austin or when Hulk Hogan were the guys, or when The Rock was the guy. So in that sense, Shawn Michaels, great in ring, great matches, should be in the top 10 definitely, but also there's the politics behind it. I think Triple H has something to do with that rating of Shawn Michaels as the top guy of all time. I really just don't think he is. I mean, I would put him actually beneath the Undertaker in terms of iconicness. I think the Undertaker's more well known. So yeah, that's my opinion. I will do a top 50 once I've worked out who I think should be on it. As an adage, I should say that Ultimate Warrior should be on this. Goldberg should be on here. Razor Ramon should be on here. Yokozuna should be on here. It's arguable, considering some of the people who are on here, that Lex Luger, who is somebody I do not like, should be on here. Sting should be on here. And there's a number of other wrestlers that need to be on here. Razor Ramon really needs to be on here. So does Goldberg. Yokozuna should be in from 50 to 40 as the greatest big man of all time. And sorry, second greatest after Andre the Giant, but certainly the most athletic big guy. He should be where Big Show is. Um, yeah, and certainly one of the most impactful figures in wrestling history. So yeah, that's my view.